안녕하세요 여러분. 오늘은 많은 분들이 기다려주셨던 일드맥스 인터뷰 영상을 갖고 왔는데요. 이번에 제가 직접 타이달의 공동 창업자이자 최고 투자 책임자 그리고 일드맥스 상품을 담당하는 주요 관계자분들을 만나고 왔는데요. 2025년 5월 22일 뉴욕 현지 시간 오후 3시에 뉴욕 증권거래소 미팅룸에서 인터뷰를 진행했습니다. 올해 초 제 채널 커뮤니티를 통해서 남겨주신 질문들을 빠짐없이 질문하려고 노력을 했고요. 명확한 답변을 받아왔습니다. 이번 영상은 특히 문의가 많았던 ROC 관련 영상을 다룬 첫 번째 편이고요. 영상 길이와 주제별 정리를 위해서 3편으로 나눠서 업로드 해보겠습니다. 또 일드맥스 관련 소식을 빠르게 받아보고 싶으신 분들은 더보기란에 있는 일드맥스 한국 공식 단톡방 링크를 확인해 주시고 들어와 주세요. 이 영상이 일드맥스를 투자하시고 계신 분들한테 꼭 도움이 되었으면 좋겠습니다. 그럼 영상 시작하겠습니다.
Alright, I want to thank you all for being here. My name is Mike Venuto. I'm the co-founder and CIO at Tidal. We're a platform that helps people launch, grow, operate ETFs. And around the table, you see my YieldMax partners.
Do you feel like more institutional interest growing?
This word, NAV erosion. I don't believe in it. I don't think it exists. It's not in the CFA books or anything like that. It's a term that everybody's throwing around now. Here's what it really is. We sell the implied volatility. We distribute it to you. The stock goes down, so the ETF goes down. That's not NAV erosion, but that's what they're calling it. Here's the other scenario. We sell the IV in implied vol, stock goes up. We distribute it to you, but the stock still stays up. Is that NAV expansion? Right? Like, I don't see how the term comes up, but what it really is, and we explain it over here, it's the fact that you have capped upside and we're volatility dependent. Those two things create that feeling of NAV erosion. So something like Moderna, it's now in the $2 range, the stock has gone from 126 to 35. That is why the ETF that references it is there. It's not because of NAV erosion, it's because we're tapping into the underlying stock. But people need to be aware of that, right? If you have a strong opinion on the underlying stock, that's the way you've got to trade it. When you're looking at YieldMax single stock products, that is the most important thing. All right. This one's the hardest one for me because I don't fully understand it either, right? Because it seems ridiculous that you call something return of capital when it's not your capital that we're returning. We got capital by selling a call, and that's what we're giving you. So it seems like a word that's regulatory that makes everything confused. Corey just wrote a wonderful white paper that's on the YieldMax website that explains how return of capital is calculated and stuff. I'd love to get it translated and out to your investors. The problem is how it affects US investors is different than how it affects South Korean investors. In US investors, it's actually kind of a good thing. It lowers your cost basis and there's a lot of positives to it. The reality is we're being forced to characterize the option income as return of capital. If the stock runs up, then it stops being return of capital, but it never becomes a qualified dividend. Corey, I know we tapped you with being the one who would explain this a little bit more today.
Yeah, so kind of, I think one of the biggest sticking points for people is that we are required to produce a monthly return of capital number, but that's an estimate. And that estimate, due to the nature of our funds, can be almost completely different from the finalized number that happens at the end of the year. So I think that piece is a little confusing to investors because we can give these estimates and then at the end of the year, there may actually be very little relation to the final number in those estimates that have accrued for 11 months or 10 months out of the year. And we have to give the estimates per our regulation. This is a scenario where the regulation makes sense as a whole across the industry, but perhaps for our products, it does not make as much sense, but there would be no unique carve out for our products. I think the best thing is to read the white paper that we have regarding the return of capital, and I hope we can get that translated to Korean. That would be ideal. But then again, we cannot give specific tax advice, and especially in a foreign market, we can't give it in the US either. But I think that and generally the return of capital is a very positive thing in the US, which is why we're very interested to learn more about what's going on in Korea as far as how the return of capital is treated.
We do get a lot of questions in the U.S. from investors about this too. So, specifically with option-based strategy funds, it is something that's inherent with the product itself. But given the background with a lot of these ETFs that are option-based, it's relatively new in the community. So I think there's an education that has to happen, both here locally and obviously overseas as well too.
There is tax complexity. We know you sent some questions over. We just wrote a return of capital paper. It's more relevant to U.S. investors, unfortunately, but we're trying our best. But we're not tax people, and the government changes the rules constantly. So there's a lot of complexity there. For U.S. investors, the return of capital actually is probably a benefit. The withholding stuff is very difficult. It's why we've not seen much success in Europe and things like that with these types of products. But at the end of the day, you've got to work with your tax accountant because it's really different for everybody.
And then also a problem